While we wait for the San Francisco 49ers to announce their new defensive coordinator, we are going to rank the top 5 prospects and position groups that the San Francisco 49ers need to address in the upcoming draft. With the NFL Combine coming up next week, it's time to switch gears and get into draft mode. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Top 5 positions the 49ers need to address in the draft. You already know what to do. Drop an SDS in the chat, smash that like button, and let's talk some 49ers football. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see it. What is going down to my sourdough squad? Let's talk some football. Let's get into diving into the specific needs for the San Francisco 49ers in the draft. And again, we are in this current state where we are kind of juggling those needs because there's still free agency after the draft. The 49ers are before the draft, right? Or am I getting my entire timeline mixed up? It doesn't matter. The San Francisco 49ers are going to have to add through the draft and through free agency and make those two things work. Obviously, taking into consideration the cap money being spent, how you can either make it work with current guys on current deals, restructures, all those different types of things. So there's a lot coming down the pipe that we need to figure out. But what we can do right now is we can simplify the top 5 positional needs that the San Francisco 49ers should focus on, especially heading into the combine coming up. So let's start at the very top. I'm going to ask, so let's start. I'm going to start with 1, and then I'm going to work our way down. So, who do you guys think the number 1 position that the 49ers need to focus on? I have an idea of who you guys are thinking. I think mine will be a little bit different, but drop it in the chat of who you think is going to be the number 1 positional need, the highest ranked position that the 49ers need to go and attack in the NFL draft. For me, the number 1 spot that the 49ers need to address is defensive line. And like I said, I think that is going to go against what some of you guys are thinking. I would imagine that the thought process is offensive line, but I'll tell you exactly why. Defensive line is the number 1 position that the 49ers need to address in the upcoming draft. And I'll show you right here. When you look at the 49ers free agents on the defensive line, you have Chase Young, Javon Kinlaw, Sebastian Joseph Day, Cleveland Farrell, Kevin Givens, and not even pictured here is going to be Randy Gregory because he is technically listed as an outside linebacker. So I don't imagine the San Francisco 49ers are going to re-sign all of these defensive linemen. And I say defensive line, typically you kind of break out edge and defensive tackle. But to be honest, I'm lumping them together because we don't know who the 49ers are going to retain. Are they going to keep Kinlaw? Are they going to keep Farrell? Are they going to keep Givens? Are they going to let Chase Young go? Randy Gregory? It's basically Nick Bosa, Arik Armstead, Javon Hargrave, and that's about it outside of the guys who have been signed to future deals that have practice squad guys, etc. So to me, when I look at the 49ers roster, I think there are some pretty large holes on this defensive line. And I don't know when you have so much money tied up in Hargrave, Eric, and Bosa, the 49ers could turn to the draft to try to get cheaper and younger. So that's why for me, I have defensive line as the number one position of need for the 49ers. I mean, if you even drill down, I mean, you look at all the snaps that if they don't sign these guys, they're losing 678 snaps from Chase Young, 438 snaps from Javon Kinlaw. Obviously, Sebastian Joseph Day didn't play all 571 with the 49ers, but you also had Cleveland Farrell with 465 snaps, 354 snaps from Kevin Givens, and then, of course, the snaps that you are going to be losing if you don't bring back Randy Gregory, because Randy Gregory obviously played a role down the stretch for the 49ers. He had 385 snaps, and he made some plays, So the 49ers have some defensive linemen to replace. It's basically what it comes down to. So that's why, for me, I think number one is going to be defensive line. And if I had to go 1A, 1B, I'm going edge. Edge is my first need. Obviously, the 49ers have the 31st pick in the first round. So I think that is a great spot to target an edge player. I have an edge player in mind. I'll tell you that person in the future when I drop my first mock. But there's an edge, I think, if you can target an edge. And again, I'm not going to sit here and say the 49ers need to pigeonhole themselves into taking an edge. One, I'm definitely in the belief you go BPA if possible. But, I see it right here in the comment. Is Drake Jackson being written off? I just don't think right now you can go into a season with Drake as your starting defensive end. They did that last year. It didn't work out. Now, that doesn't mean he is going to be able to not be able to develop and get better and improve. And same thing with Robert Beal Jr. Those guys have the ability to improve, but you have to keep adding talent. That's why the San Francisco 49ers traded for two edge players throughout the season. And as we know, they're fundamentally built from the defensive line out. It's almost like the number one position group that they try to dump resources in. So for me, defensive line, including interior defensive tackle and edge, are going to be the number one need for the 49ers in the draft. Now, they can also address this in free agency, right? They could go out, get a big time defensive edge. There's a couple guys in free agency, but because we don't have the luxury of knowing what free agency looks like right now, we have to just go and assume and do our homework that we look at the holes and we're going to turn to the draft and go get some defensive linemen. So let's move to the second ranked positional need, in my opinion, for the 49ers heading into the draft. Feel free to drop your names in the comments or your position in the comment below of who you think would be number two. Now, I've seen this group as the number one for a lot of you guys. I'm going to have them at two. I have the offensive line as being a position that I would like to see the San Francisco 49ers continue to add through the draft. But this doesn't really change for me right now, because I'm always saying this. I'm always saying that the 49ers need to go out and get offensive line. It's not necessarily the case. And when we look at the 49ers offensive line right now, Colton McKivitz will likely be back. Spencer Burford will be back. Jake Brendel will be back. Aaron Banks will be back. You also will have Trent Williams, who will be back. So the 49ers, for the most part, are returning their offensive line. So this is how I look at it. And that's part of the reason why I don't have O-line as the number one in the NFL draft. I have it at 2, but there is a scenario that exists depending on how the 49ers feel about Burford. If the 49ers don't feel Burford is going to be a guy that they can rely on in the future, that would be the only reason why I would see the San Francisco 49ers draft a guard at 31 and or a center guard combo, someone who can play both roles. Because as we know, Brendel is about 31, 32, I believe. So you want to start to look and potentially develop those types of guys. But it is also important to note that the 49ers carried, I believe, 8 offensive linemen last year. Is either 8, they might have went 9 because of the Jalen Moore, Matt Pryor, Feliciano, Burford. Like, I think they might have carried 9, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think they carried 9 last year, which was not typical. But again, it all depends on, can they find someone potentially in free agency to plug and play? Do they bring back Feliciano? Feliciano could potentially be plug and play and compete with Burford in camp, or you can go outside of that and potentially go get a free agent and plug and play at guard. So and also part of the reason why I have O-line second is in part due to the theory that I always pose and say is that you can find, especially interior starters, rounds 3 through 5, 2 through 5 if you want, right? You can find interior guys, center guards later in the draft. That's why I'm not prioritizing, you know, the blue chip centers, the blue chip guards that may or may not be available, because I know you can find value at that position later, and that kind of feels like where the 49ers would live. I could see the 49ers addressing maybe guard center in the second round, at the end of the second round. So in the 60s, you can find a quality offensive lineman in the 60s. So that's why I don't have offensive lineman as my number one. The only thing is that if there's a tackle at the one spot, like a Patrick Paul out of Houston is a guy that if you want to kind of be either a left tackle in training, you see a scenario where you put potentially Patrick Paul at right tackle, try to get him acclimated to that spot, and then you want to kick Colton McKivitz down to guard, which I kind of feel is a more natural position for Colton. He was drafted as a guard. He's proven to be a great 6th offensive lineman, and he started all year. I thought he was definitely serviceable, but I know a lot of people are looking to upgrade that spot. So if you want to upgrade your pass protection and you get a tackle prospect at 31 that you feel comfortable with as a starter, you could go tackle in the first, kick McKivitz down to guard if you feel like that's a spot that you feel more comfortable with McKivitz. You're not putting McKivitz on an island. He can still hold up well. I would say he would hold up much better in pass protection as a guard, and I think that's the biggest gripe that most fans have with Colton. So there are multiple ways to go about this, right? We're not rigid, but for me, it's defensive line. 1A and 1B is edge first, defensive tackle second. Defensive tackle actually might be down the list, but I do know they need depth at defensive tackle. They definitely need edge. I think edge is key. Edge was key last year. Edge was key last year, trying to get. We talked about it throughout the draft last year. We talked about it through free agency. We talked about it through training camp. They need speed on the opposite side, in my opinion. They need speed on the opposite side of Nick Bosa. So I think solidifying that player, solidifying that edge, and again, they rotate. So you want to have options. You go out and get that guy. That's my one. So edge one. I do think they need defensive tackles, but I can also say you can go later in the draft to get defensive tackle depth. So I'm less concerned about that, but edge for sure one, offensive line two, obviously tackle. There's differentiating values between tackle, offensive guard, center, just like there's edge, defensive tackle. But I would say number three, again, depending on BPA, best player available, you could even slot above offensive line. And I think for number three, and if you want to drop it in the chat of who you think number three is, what position number three should be. And like I said, you can make the case. You can slot this position group ahead of offensive line. For me, I'm going to go ahead and say that cornerback would be the number three position of need heading into the draft. You are in a good spot with Charvarius Ward. Charvarius Ward's an all-pro. You got that on lock, and he fits a great need. You have Deommodore Lenoir, who's playing exceptionally well and I think really growing into his role. And again, he deserves a lot of credit. At one point, he was buried on the depth chart behind Ambry Thomas, behind everyone. I think just 2 years ago, and elevated into a starting role and hasn't looked back. And he's only improving and only getting better. So I feel really comfortable with Deommodore and Charvarius. But for me, I need one more. And again, this could be addressed in free agency, but I think you also have to look in the draft and see what you can get, because you can also get a cost-controlled guy. And if you can get a cost-controlled cornerback, because Deommodore Lenoir is going to be up for a contract after next season, I believe. He's got 1 or 2 more years. He might have 2 more years left before he'll be up for a contract extension. So if you want to go cost-controlled route, that's why you could go cornerback as well. And I would love to see 3 just dogs at the cornerback position for the 49ers, and especially young up-and-coming dogs. You've got Charvarius, your leader, your alpha in the cornerback room. You got Demo solidified himself and is going to continue to improve. Then go out, get me like a Greg Newsome type. Get me a guy with length, speed, a ton of agility. Get me a guy like Greg Newsome with the Browns coming out of Northwestern. I think he was taken in the second round. Give me a guy like that. If you can find me a Greg Newsome, that would be phenomenal to be able to put with Mooney, with Deommodore, and you can do all different kinds of things. And again, if you have that guy, you have this ability now where if you can literally put out Mooney and Deommodore, and when you get into nickel, you can kick Deommodore into the slot, into the nickel. So you have flexibility, and I think that's a good spot to be in for the 49ers. So for me, 3 is cornerback. And again, based on who's available and where they're slotted, you could make the case that cornerback's even ahead of offensive line. For number 4, I'm going to give you an opportunity to guess who you think number 4 is. For who I think the 49ers should target from a position standpoint in the draft. This one, I think we might be on lockstep with of how the 49ers need to continue to add depth here and continue to get younger and cheaper as they continue to move forward. Obviously, you want good quality players to play this position, but I think you need some depth. And for me, the depth that I'm looking at is also solely related to a pretty substantial injury that we know happened in the Super Bowl. And so that's why I have linebacker as number 4. Now, the 49ers did go out and they drafted D. Winters and they got Jalen Graham last year. Both show a ton of promise. Both show some pretty solid traits. Jalen Graham really showed out in preseason and training camp. He didn't get a lot of run in season. It was more D. Winters. D. Winters definitely shows ability, still raw. But with Oren Burks being a free agent, with Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles being a free agent, with Dre Greenlaw, no timetable for return just yet, I think the 49ers have to go linebacker and focus and see which linebackers they can get, what linebackers they can get. My current 5 isn't all defense, but it's definitely a lot geared toward defense. So for me, I've got, so if you're counting at home, number 1 defensive line, specifically edge. Number 2 offensive line, it would be more geared towards a tackle than an interior offensive lineman. But that's why you can also make the case number 3 cornerback could jump offensive line based on BPA. And then number 4, I got linebacker due to the depth concerns, issues with Dre, and some of the free agents that remain to be signed. So what I'm currently looking at for number 5 is going to be interesting. I'm curious to see what you guys think number 5 would be. For me, I think it is related to some of the free agents that the 49ers have and, kind of some of the stuff that's going on. We're not really sure exactly who's returning and who is going. And so based on that, for me, number 5 would actually be wide receiver. Juwan Jennings is an RFA. So my gut feels like Juwan's going to get poached. I kind of feel like they're going to drop a tender on him, maybe second, third round, and some team may actually look at Juwan and say Juwan is, I think a team would pay a third round pick for Juwan and then pay him a contract. I think they would. I think Juwan is underutilized to a certain extent. He's a great energy guy, great locker room guy, and he's a quality player. He's entering the prime of his career right now. A team could absolutely hit him with the Kendrick Bourne type deal, maybe a little bit less. But some team could find some value with Juwan. And if that occurs, I don't know if the 49ers will match. So I am kind of teetering on the idea that Jawan will potentially get signed as an RFA, which would return, from my understanding, another draft pick based on what the 49ers tender him at. Ray McLeod is a free agent. Chris Conley is a free agent. Now, we don't know what's happening with BA until further notice. I am assuming BA is going to be playing for the San Francisco 49ers. So that's how I'm kind of operating. But I do think if Jawan goes, like, you need a legit wide receiver 3. Doesn't appear that Danny Gray is working out or has met expectations. He was literally redshirted all season. And I think the 49ers would absolutely benefit by having a third weapon. I do like Ronnie Bell. I like what Ronnie brings to the table. But again, I would like to also bring someone else in. And Justin's here right on time. He heard wide receiver. And his guy is becoming more and more enticing the more I look into him as well. So that is definitely, I would like to get some additional depth at wide receiver. I would like to get maybe another big slot, maybe another, again, I'm looking for kind of like a Demario Douglas kind of a guy. And Cowing is really starting to grow on me thanks to Justin. Justin's cowing propaganda is definitely working on me. I came across a trainer who's working out all the top wide receivers. So Brendan Rice, you name it. He's working with like 7 or 8 of the kind of not top end wide receivers, but kind of like that tier 2 wide receiver group. And Cowing is like, you can see that man's got control. He's in full control of the way he runs his routes. And he's got speed. Yeah, he looks like he's going to be a guy. So I'm definitely becoming more intrigued as every day goes by. And Jacob Cowing and Justin's been leader of the hype train. So we'll see. I still have to do the study. I haven't studied him. So first impression, I like what I see. Haven't studied him. I haven't really studied anyone. That's part of the problem. But we're going to get to studying here pretty soon. But that's kind of how I got it ranked. And feel free to drop your top 5 in the chat. Again, I've got edge. It's basically edge, tackle, cornerback, linebacker, wide receiver. I definitely understand how tight end could be up there. I definitely understand how fullback can be up there. Interior offensive line could be up there. But again, I'm so confident in my ability to locate interior offensive linemen in rounds 3 through 5 that's why I don't rank them high, because I know I can find them. I know there's going to be a guy who's going to slip through the cracks, and you're going to be able to get immense value. The amount of all pros I've seen come out of those rounds, Pro Bowlers, guys like that, man, it happens every year. So I understand going after the elite traits of a tackle. That's a different story. But when it comes to interior offensive line, you can find those guys, man. You can find those guys. I know I've also fallen into the trap of wanting the top end interior offensive line. But I think when you're around pick 30, I really feel like you can kick that can down the line to third round at that point. If you're not getting one of those top tier center guards in, picks, I would say like 12 through like 23, I think there's a pretty significant teardrop typically. So you can just kick that can down the line. Just, well, okay, well, and you got a center, you got a guard in Banks. You've got questions at right guard with Feliciano, but like we talked about, if they found it viable to go draft a tackle and potentially put him at right tackle, you can kick McKivitz down to guard if that's really something they wanted to do, and actually could be an option. So we'll see. And again, would be great to solidify a young cornerback for the 49ers out there, to be able to pair as a true cornerback that we can rely in, week out, like we rely on Diamador and Charvarius. So you do have Darrell Luter Jr. in the wings. Still plenty to prove. Samuel Womack as well. So that's going to be interesting. And again, linebacker as well. So overall, man, everything's up for grabs, but that's kind of where my thought process is at. If we can somehow get our hands on an edge at 31, I would love to do that. If we could somehow get our hands on a legitimate tackle prospect, I would look at that as well. I'm always going to be of the belief to build through the trenches. That's just, you guys know how we rock here. That won't change for me ever. I'm a big believer of building through the trenches. Shoring up your offensive line, defensive line is always going to be a number one priority for me. So we'll see if that's actually what the 49ers do. But to kind of keep that in mind, that's kind of how I'm going to try to be going through the draft. Those are going to start out as being the positions that I'll be focusing on. I think I already know who you're talking about. Yeah, I'm down for hybrids. I'm down for hybrids at pick 31. That's typically where the hybrids go. I think like JOK was an early second. I think Bolton, like Nick Bolton, who's primarily a linebacker, but he plays pretty well. He was a late first. I'm definitely down for hybrids. The hybrids tend to the when you're not sure, they tend to slide a little bit. So we'll see. We'll see how this is going to be a very interesting draft, though. It really is. It really is going to be. The 49ers currently have 11 picks, and they have you're right, Bolton was a second round pick. They're going to have a lot of flexibility in this draft. Let me double check. Free agency's in March, right? Free agency isn't, I believe, like the legal tamperings, like March 15th, right? The official league year begins. Legal tampering begins March 11th. So this list will come into much clearer focus, I would say, after that. So take it with a grain of salt because the 49ers are going to have to go through free agency prior to the draft. And so this list will obviously evolve and change once we see who the 49ers sign, re-sign. So there's moves to be made. But heading into the combine, this is kind of what I'm looking at. Heading into the combine, definitely heavily into the defensive line, definitely heavy into the offensive line. Want to try to find a cornerback, linebackers as well, wide receivers. We're going to be scouting everything, but that for me is kind of like where I'm looking at, where I think the 49ers could turn to the draft to find. But again, we got to go through free agency, and that will be a fascinating time period to see who they go and get. So we're going to have next week general managers and coaches meet on Tuesday, the 27th. I'll be in Indianapolis until the 4th. And then the following week, it's free agency. So we're going to be picking up here, guys. Again, it's been since 2019 since we played in the Super Bowl. So I forgot that I'm used to having a condensed off season with how the 49ers go in the playoffs. But I'm not used to them playing in the Super Bowl and just how quickly the off season is on us. And so combine next week, basically a week, like 10 days after that, we have free agency, the start of legal tampering. And then that will go on, that will trickle on for like probably a week or so of getting free agents signed. And then we are a month away from the NFL draft. So it's on us fast. It's on us fast. So I would say I got to start looking into free agents. That's what I'm realizing that I need to do. Is effectively what I am saying. Is I am way behind on this offseason, which is fine. But I need to start focusing on free agents too. So that's what we got like 300 prospects to break down, and we got to do free agency. Yes, we're gonna somehow stay extremely busy throughout this off season for sure. We got a Chiefs fan in here. Duncan says you'll have a new DC before the combine. That's the hope, Duncan. That is the hope, Dunkin' Donuts, that we have a new defensive coordinator to be able to potentially speak to at the combine. So that would be very interesting to be able to get that access to figure out who the new defensive coordinator is and be able to talk to them at the combine. But guys, it's Thursday. It's end of business Thursday here on the West Coast. It's 5:00. I know 49er, or I know pro football personnel do not operate on normal work schedules. But hey, it's 5. It's 5. And then it's Friday. And then we're at the combine. So it's going to be fascinating to see when this comes out, and what if it doesn't come out? What if it doesn't come out? 1 a.m. Where are you, Sean? Are you? That means like you're halfway across the world, right? If you're watching and it's 1 a.m. That's crazy. Let me know where you're watching from. What would make the John Lynch press conference much more fascinating is that if we don't have a defensive coordinator hired by the combine, that feels unprecedented, no? Does that feel unprecedented to I know the move came late because of the Super Bowl, but that feels unprecedented to not have a DC hired by the combine. So that feels like the deadline. Again, John Lynch is going to be speaking on Tuesday, I believe, the 26th. So is tomorrow the day? Do we find out tomorrow? New DC? It does feel like it will low key be an internal hire. Ireland. Dad used to work in the Bay Area when I was a kid, so I grew up a Niners fan. Nice. You are literally halfway across the world. That's crazy. Well, thanks for checking in from Ireland. That's pretty dope. Yeah, I hope we find out tomorrow as well. Luke says, "Who's your number one wish list free agent?" I'm gonna actually start working on this. I haven't done any free agent work. Like I said, I am so behind on this offseason because of the Super Bowl. And just really focusing on the Super Bowl. But that being said, it's time to work. So I will put together a free agent list. Maybe we'll do that tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow will be a free agent focused day. We haven't done any free agency talk. So I think that's fair. We'll do free agency talk tomorrow. I'll put together a list. I'll put together again, and who knows what that list is going to look like. But I'll do that tomorrow. So we'll do free agency tomorrow. I think we need to, especially before the combine as well. We need to figure this out, right? We need to get to the bottom of this this roster for the San Francisco 49ers, and I'm gonna do my best to guide you through it. Michael says, bold take. Lynch talks to Brad at the combine, and he offers Brad the DC. Brad gets Burns. Hey, Lynch, if you're watching, I know you're a big fan of the ginger beard, and just like Kyle, you guys watch. But just in case you are watching, Mr. Lynch, like I said, the offer still stands. Give me 5 minutes with the Panthers general manager. Just give me 5 minutes on the phone. I will somehow get Brian Burns out of there, and for much cheaper than anticipated. So just give me 5 minutes on the phone. You know what really sucks though? Speaking of the combine, I told you my combine story last year where I was walking like through the stadium, but there's these gates where they have security, and the security separates the fans from the NFL people. So you had fans on this side, NFL scouts, GMs, coaches on this side of the stadium. I was on that side heading towards the fan side, and as I'm opening the gate, there's a group of gentlemen walking towards me. So I hold it open for them. I say, "Oh, you guys go first." And The guy in the very front looks me dead in the eye and says, "Thank you." And I look at him, and it's Scott Fitterer, the Panthers general manager. And I've told you this story many times, but completely unconsciously, my brain went into realizing it was the Panthers general manager and instantly making eye contact with him. And the first thing my brain does is literally locks in with his eyes. And in my head, I say, "Trade us Brian Burns." This is how insane I am, guys. I just hope you know, like, when I say, like, I love football, like, I love football. Like, I'm this insane, and I love the draft. Former draft crush Brian Burns, that in person, I'm opening the gate for the Panthers general manager, and I realize it's him, and my brain is, like, telepathically trying to communicate to him, "Trade me Brian Burns." That is a true story. That actually happened. Without hesitation, without, like, a thought process, my brain just went, all of a sudden, I think I'm some master of witchcraft that could somehow telepathically communicate with the Panthers general manager to trade me Brian Burns. That's how ridiculously insane I am when it comes to this football stuff, but I love it. I love it so much. I love that was my brain's first reaction, was to think it could telepathically communicate with the general manager to trade us Brian Burns. That's how special I am. But it was pretty cool. I mean, at the time, it was Frank Reich, the head coach, with him. It was McCown with him. Obviously, those guys, none of those guys are there anymore. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah, realistically, is Brian Burns coming through? Probably not. But I love it. I love that the crack of, anything is possible still exists. Like, it could happen. You can never say never in the NFL. You can never say never. And the reason why is the 49ers called on him last year. So if they called on him last year, they know how much he's going to be worth. So it'll be fascinating. Who knows? Who knows? Most likely not going to happen, but there's also a part of me that doesn't want to believe it until it's like, and I've said it, until Brian Burns actually signs that long-term deal, I'm holding out hope that maybe something can happen. Do I understand that's a pipe dream? Absolutely. But I've seen crazier things happen in the NFL. I do believe that as well. And we also have, like, what feels like 13 free agents at defensive end. So who knows? Justin says, I know the 49ers like converted safeties to LB, but Cooper is a converted outside linebacker, 6'2", 230 pounds, over an 80-inch wingspan, almost 34-inch long arms, but was PFF's highest graded coverage linebacker last season. Ooh. 6'2", 230 with long arms. Yeah, I like that. Highest graded coverage linebacker. Hey, you got to be able to cover as a linebacker. You got to be able to go sideline to sideline. You got to be a dual threat to be a linebacker in this scheme, in this system. That's a good point. Who would have thought CMC would become a Niner? Who would have thought? But no, Cooper. I think you tagged me in the clip where he it was like he rushed up. I can't remember. It was like an offensive lineman pulling. He like rushed up the A or B gap and just absolutely got on the running back in like 2 seconds. Yes. Yes. Stop drafting defensive linemen in the first round or top pick every year. Nope. Nope. Keep going. Keep going. Keep drafting defensive linemen. Keep drafting edge players. Don't stop. I used to hate it as well. I used to be like, man, it's like nonstop with defensive linemen in the first round. No, keep going. I've completely switched my tune on it. Keep going. Keep going and do it again this year. Go out and get an edge. Trade up if you have to. Go into the 20s if you have to. And again, I can see AJ in the chat. Rather bring one in. Of course, but if you want a quality edge, you're paying for that. You have to pay for that edge. So if money is the concern, if you really are concerned about having Nick Bosa, highest end, what is he? Is he currently the highest paid defensive end? Eric Armstead, one of the highest paid. Eric Armstead and Javon Hargrave being highly compensated. Would it make sense to then supplement a player on a rookie deal on the edge, opposed to going and paying yet another premium? Because if you're paying a premium, go get BB, go get Brian Burns, go do what you need to do to get him. But if that's your logic against Brian Burns, well, that should be your logic against Joey Bosa. That should be your logic against Uche. That should be your logic against any available higher end defensive end, because you have to pay them. And if you're not in the boat of paying, okay, go draft one then. Go get one in the first. Go get one. I mean, honestly, you can find guys in that 31 hole. That 31 hole you're going to see. And one of the benefits, I think, for the 49ers is you got some quarterbacks in this class. You're going to have Caleb, May, Penix, Jaden. You're gonna have 4 or 5 quarterbacks. Who knows? Maybe some other guys rise up that go in the first. So that's gonna keep pushing guys down. So for us, we want as many quarterbacks to go in the first as possible to push talent down. And then if the 49ers identify someone, like let's say in the 20s, then move up, trade up into the 20s, trade up into the late teens to go get a guy who's falling. Remember, Brian Burns went at pick 16. Micah Parsons went at pick 12. You can find elite quality players in the teens who are going to get pushed down due to quarterbacks. So, man, if you find someone that you got to have, edge player, cornerback, I would say go up and get those premier positions. Outside of that, like I said, you can find value in interior offensive line later. If there's a tackle that you want, maybe. But for me, it's like you got to go get premier spots. You got to go. To me, that edge is still the premier position. And with Nick Bosa getting paid and the pay structure, I think it would benefit you if you're not going the most premium defensive line, the highest paid defensive line in the NFL, by adding another free agent or trading for a Brian Burns, then you got to go get a rookie. Go get a rookie. That's how I think about it. But again, I think I'm still wrapping my head around it all. Again, still got to dive into the free agency pool. I haven't even looked at free agent prospects. So I got to look at the free agents, tie those up with our free agents, trying to predict who the 49ers are going to re-sign, who they're going to let walk. So there's some things that we need to do. There's definitely some homework I need to do. I apologize for not being more prepared. Typically, I'm more prepared, but it has been difficult for reasons I've already explained. Um, but yeah, definitely, and also too the whole like trading BA for a first. I don't like that at all. I don't like it. I'm I don't obviously, you got right neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr. ain't going to the 49ers. Rodunze, right? You have some good wide receivers, but I don't I I'm not of the belief that you can trade BA and then just draft a wide receiver who's going to fit in to do what BA does. I don't believe it. I don't believe it to be true. So that's why I don't like the idea at all of trading BA. Like, oh, well, we get a first, maybe some additional. Yeah, but that's no guarantee. It's no guarantee at all. And if we know if you're a wide receiver, you gotta go through Kyle. You gotta go through Kyle. You gotta make it through Kyle's force field. And that's a challenge. It's a challenge. He's effectively the wide receiver coach. So you have to be able to make it through that, understand his scheme, understand how he's going to be on top of you for every detail. That takes time. That takes time to work through. Debo's talked about it before. I remember Debo doing a interview at the Super Bowl, just basically saying like, man, he's like, I never thought I was going to step on the field because I never thought I was going to learn his playbook. So I don't love the idea at all of being in a win now season and trading BA for a draft pick. That makes me sick to my stomach. To think about it happening and thinking about it not working. That's I think the fear that I have is the unknown of who you're getting. And BA just to me just feels so perfect for what we do. I'm all for getting BA more targets. If we are looking to transition to a more 11 personnel type offense where we do end up moving away from, we go more 3 wide. I would love that. Get him more targets, get him more production. Would love it. Wait, what? What are you talking about? Who's saying this? Kirk Cousins? Is this Mike Florio special? Who's saying I know you're trying to say Kirk Cousins, but who's saying that? Who's saying that? There's a couple people reporting they might be interested. Some other reporter on YouTube. Anyone of credibility saying this, or is this just another off-season throwing stuff at the wall and seeing if it sticks type of thing? Boxing fan, you check. You still there? All right. Well, Adam says, grab the foil, grab the tinfoil hat. See, I put the hole in it. So yeah, I can't see. I think it's time for a new tinfoil hat. This thing has been rocking since 2020. 2021. I'm surprised it's still in that shape, to be honest with you. Yeah, the Kirk Cousins thing. Sports Illustrated. Oh, who at Sports Illustrated? Sports Illustrated employs quite the bunch. Anyways, I'm not concerned about the not concerned about that. Yeah. No word on the DC. Still trying to figure that out. So we'll see. But I think for tomorrow, let's focus on free agents. Hopefully tomorrow we find out who the DC is. That's the goal. The goal is that we know who the 49ers defensive coordinator is tomorrow. That would be great. So we'll see. We will see. But I appreciate everyone in the chat. Smash that like button if you guys haven't already. That would be phenomenal. And I appreciate you guys as always. We'll be back tomorrow. Like I said, I think a little free agency preview would be nice and all that good stuff. And hopefully we're talking about 49ers defensive coordinator, but that remains to be seen. Make sure you have post notifications on. Hopefully you get them, because the second we find out we're going live, we're going to react to it all and do all that good stuff. So appreciate y'all. Grab your cookies on the way out. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see